Well, hello, friends. This is Sandra Clay. I'm the pastor at Cooks United Methodist Church. I was on the patio, and the breeze is just a little chillier than I planned for. So forgive the distractions of being inside the vehicle, but right before I hit start or go live, I just, shivering is not my best look. So neither is windswept hair. So for your forgiveness and for your understanding and for your humor, I appreciate you. Good morning, Stacy. Just a very quick reminder that if you are in Middle Tennessee, you are always welcome at Cooks United Methodist Church. Well, shoot, you can come from anywhere. You're always welcome here. Anybody is. But there are a lot of things going on during the season we call Lent. And so the quick reminder is this. If you are interested in discovering the series The Chosen and want to watch that with some friends, especially some new friends, March the 18th, we'll start at 10 a.m. Bring something to contribute to the community table. And we'll watch and graze and talk and pray until we finish season 1. And on March the 28th, we will be gathering at 6:30 here at the church and invite you to bring something to add to a community table. We'll potluck it together as we talk about Women Talking, the movie. If you have a chance, please watch it. It's still in some theaters. You can stream it digitally. I believe there's a cost to that in most services that will offer it, or read the book, or all three. A beautiful and challenging story that really raises a lot of questions about forgiveness, and that is the wilderness journey that we are walking this year as we walk with Jesus and toward Jesus, that we might know more deeply what it means to be forgiven and to forgive. Jesus has a lot to say about that. And then as we get closer, we'll let you know about all the worship opportunities that we have. But those two are coming up pretty quick here as we begin today, the month of March. And as we continue in the season we call Lent. Remember, we're also using, if you've been with us any of the last week, then you know that we're using 4 resources off and on. Not a lot of rhyme and a reason, but just simply because I couldn't choose. And today I want to share some things from Rachel Srubus. Rachel Srubus is her name. And the title of her work is The Desert of Compassion. And desert for her is the same as wilderness. She'll use those interchangeably at times. And we'll talk about that, about the why of that in just a moment. I don't want to pass off this as my work at all. I do have some thoughts about it that I'll interject. But it's a beautiful book. And if you really resonate with some of the things that I share with you that she's written specifically, then get it and hang on to it. It'll be a great resource year after year. And the way Rachel begins each one of her entries is this way. She shares with us a Bible verse or two, and then in a poetic way, she writes it in a more modern, but also less defined way. This is what I mean. She reminds us in today's reading of a verse that we find in the 23rd chapter of Exodus. Verse 9 says this: "You shall not oppress a resident alien. You know the heart of an alien, for you were aliens in a land of Egypt. On either side of this verse, God is calling the Hebrews, the Israelites, to remember. And I've read recently, remember is commanded more in Old Testament and New Testament together than any other command, including obedience, follow me. Doesn't mean that those things didn't occur as often, but recorded in God's word. Remember me, remember whose you are, remember what I've done for you, remember where you've come from, remember. Those are all my admonitions. Listen to the way Rachel sums up this call to remember that results in the shall not that the Israelites were given about the way they treat someone who is traveling through, or who is looking for a new home. Somewhere beneath their seeming amnesia, from this perspective of God, somewhere beneath their seeming amnesia, my people remember ancestral migrations, stories of forebears driven from their original countries or exiled in their colonized homelands. The stories are inscribed in the blood. In your body reverberate heartbeats of people who hauled hope and trauma into the future you now call your generation. Look into history. You'll find me there, commanding compassion for strangers akin to your forebears. How beautiful. And it's not just about literal land. Many of us have trekked across deserts, arid, desolate places, because it is no longer tolerable, safe, or welcoming where we were, to the point that we are willing to travel. So let's think for a moment, the way Rachel encourages us to. Let's think for a moment about about the reality of desert. I didn't check any of this out. I trust it. She printed it. Natural deserts cover 1/5 of this world we know as our home. God created those deserts. Now we've added a little by the way we've treated this earth, but natural deserts cover about 1/5 of the earth, and 1/6 of the human population lives in those deserts. You and I may think of a desert as hot and so arid, but that's not the only description of a desert place. The Antarctic is a desert of sorts, though it's freezing cold. There are limitations on what lives there because of the extreme temperatures, the extreme weather situation. There are coastal deserts, there are inland deserts, there are deserts in just about every kind of climate, and there are deserts on every continent in this world. I want you to think not only about the aridness or the lack of sustenance in a desert, but also think about those who choose a migration of sorts. If you know anybody, or you've also been in these places at the same time a migration happens, then you know about snowbirds. In the same way that, well, real birds, because of the weather, travel from one part of the world to another to have safety and comfort, then many of us make a migration of sorts for a season or for seasons to those places. We're not beyond the traveling through a difficult place to get somewhere else that is wonderful, warm, inviting, safe, trustworthy, that is home. Rachel Srubus challenges, though, us to think about the reality of desert and migration in our day, remembering who we are, our people, in heart and spirit. If no other connection, our people in heart and spirit have been affected by these kinds of deserts and migrations, not just because we believe in the one true God who loves both Jew and Gentile, but there are many of us who also have this same story repeated when it comes to the Native American reality here in this country. I know folks who are Armenian, and they have relatives, and so story after story of the heartbreak that their ancestors knew. In the mid-1990s, Srubus reminds us that there was a plan developed along the U.S.-Mexico border, that top plan, entitled Border Patrol Strategic Plan 1994 and Beyond, described the desert there in that area this way: the border environment is diverse. Mountains, desert, lakes, rivers, and valleys form natural barriers to passage. Illegal entrance, crossing through remote, uninhabited expanses of land and sea along the border can find themselves in mortal danger. And there are some, especially within the faith community, who would argue that this prevention through deterrence kind of weaponizes the desert. We want you to be afraid of crossing here so that you'll choose not to. But you and I realize, whether we're talking about migration, immigration, regardless of the dangers, that folks are leaving a place that they believe is no longer inhabitable for them, and the desert is worth the risk. Now, I also want you to continue to remember not just those who are or who have made geographical migrations, but those who emotionally, physically, relationally, spiritually have been willing to cross the desert because where they are is no longer inhabitable. Okay, I'm not going to be so vague, church. I want you to think about those who have left the church because it feels more like a threat to home, and they're willing to navigate the arid desert of walking away from church in order to find a more inhabitable place, a welcoming home elsewhere. Listen to a part of Rachel Srubus's response to some of these thoughts that she's having as we engage with the picture and the metaphor, even the allegory of desert here in our Lenten journey. For fortunate desert dwellers like me, she lives down near the Southwest, who would never dream of walking a long distance to a land where they wouldn't be welcomed. It's easy to remain oblivious to the dangers that the desert poses to unprotected people. One summer afternoon, following a rare and much-needed downpour, I walked with my husband Ken through a wildlife refuge just a few miles north of the border checkpoint. We were there to revel in the water-cooled air of the grassland plain above the desert's elevation. We watched for vermilion flycatchers and gray hawks. I scanned the mesquite branches for birds and the ground for treasures. Ken will tell you that I'm a bit raven-like, always on the lookout for shiny things to scavenge. I saw a glint of green near my feet and pulled from the mud what turned out to be a rosary, the kind many migrants carry as they make their way, as they pray, to safety. The crucifix pendant was partly broken. Jesus, dying, was missing his right arm. I pocketed the rosary. Later, I rinsed the soil from it and hung it from the rear view mirror of my car. She goes on to talk about watching that broken crucifix, Jesus dying still, flopping and turning and dancing from her rearview mirror as she enclosed herself inside to travel where she would. She will tell you of many times when she's held that crucifix in her fingertips and wondered about not only Jesus, but about Mary's heart, the one that contemplated mysteries, as she says. The life through which the string of beads once passed, the human being who once passed through the desert or died trying. Rachel Srubus will never know really the backstory or the forward story of that crucifix. But that crucifix could remind more of us than just Rachel Srubus of that original question that she asks: why would anyone choose to go to the desert? Those who are fine in our comfort must remember those who have trudged through, those who are trudging through, those who will trudge through the desert. Listen to how she closes her thoughts for this day. I come back to my original question, she says. Why would anyone choose to go to the desert? Reminiscent of that time-worn, pointless riddle in which the chicken crossed the road. An answer comes, more lifeline than punchline, to get to the other side. Perhaps you have walked the desert, migrating from what is no longer tolerable through what is also intolerable at best, in order for the promise of something greater. You've watched your children struggle. You've struggled yourself. Whether it is geographical, whether it's emotional or relational, whether your desert was one you traveled alone or with others. I believe we've all experienced this, and may we be mindful of the resident alien among us. I want us to close our time with this beautiful prayer that Rachel Srubus closes her writing with. Would you pray with me? God, on the move, accompany the travelers, whoever they are, whatever their reasons. Watch over the goings and comings of people in transition. Let those who enter the desert unready for merciless terrain and unrelenting heat, let them get to the other side of desolation to find shelter and water and compassion. Let them find you, Lord, in your mercy. Let all your beloved people find you. Lead us to the new life toward which Lent, this sacred desert season, points us. Amen. My friends, whether you are in transition, in relationships, in work or school life, in your spiritual journey, in your thought life, however it is that you experience transition in this life, I hope the words of her beautiful prayer will echo inside. We are praying for you to find home and compassion, mercy and company. God is all of that and more for you. Bless you on this day. I will be joining you tomorrow and leading us from a very special place. So that's all the hint I'm going to give. So now I've got to go pack the car and head out. Thank you for joining me today. Blessings on all that you experience in these hours that God has given you. Bless you.